Today we're going to take a look at some more factoring examples. So starting with example number 1. We want to factor 6x squared plus 22x minus 8. Now, when you're factoring anything that has a number in front of your x squared, you want to make sure that you first check to see if you can factor out a GCF. So first thing you do is try to factor out a greatest common factor. So what that means is check to see if these three numbers right here have a GCF. So 6, 22, and negative 8. If you want, you can list out the factors to see what common factors they have. So I'm going to just list them out really quickly right here. We'll just list out factors for positive 8 to make it a little bit easier to see. So I listed out all of my factors, and you can see that there's one common factor, and that is 2. So 2 is going to be our GCF. So what we need to do is we need to factor it out. I'm going to write it on the outside of my parentheses. On top, write the original polynomial, and then divide it by the GCF. So again, GCF on the outside, original polynomial divided by the GCF. Now we just need to simplify it. So I'm going to divide 6 divided by 2, which is 3x to the second, 22 divided by 2, and negative 8 divided by 2. So now I have a more simple polynomial. Then you can factor this polynomial. Do not start to factor it right away because it will change your answer. You need to make sure to always factor out a GCF before you begin using the box method. So now that we have our GCF on the outside, now we can factor using our box method. So when we're factoring, we're only going to focus on the part that's inside the parentheses. So factor this part only. Keep the 2 on the outside for now. We're only concerned about what's inside here. So we want to list out our A, B, and C value. A value is 3, B is 11, C is negative 4. Same steps as previous. Multiply A times C. In this case, make sure you pay attention to what you're multiplying. We need to multiply 3 times negative 4. So that's going to be negative 12. Now we're going to list all our factors for negative 12, starting with 1. And since there are negatives, I'm going to also list out the other variations. So negative 1, negative 2, and negative 3. Now we want to take the sum. So sum of our factors. So I'm going to add our factors together. 1 plus negative 12, 2 plus negative 6, 3 plus negative 4, negative 1 plus 12, negative 2 plus 6, and negative 3 plus 4. So I list out all of my sums right here. I just added each of these together. Now that I have the sum of my factors, remember we need to choose the correct factor pair. In order to do that, we want to look for which one matches our B value. So go back here, look at our B value. It was positive 11. So I'm looking for a B value that matches 11. I see it right here. This is our factor pair. This matches the B value that we're looking for. So we want to use negative 1 and 12. So everything else is very similar to what we did with the box method. I'll draw my box over here. We want to put negative 1 and 12 in our two boxes, so negative 1x and positive 12x. Next, we put the first term. So remember, our first term was 3x squared. So 3x squared will go in the box. Make sure you include the number and the variable. Our last term, which is negative 4, will go in the bottom corner of our box. Now, GCF. For these problems, you need to pay a little closer attention to what the GCF is because we have coefficients now in front of the x squared. So when I'm looking at these two boxes right here, you want to find what is the GCF of 3x squared and 12x. Well, first of all, looking at the numbers in front, the coefficients, there's a GCF of 3. So I'm going to include that. Now I look at my variables, and I know that there's a common factor of x. So on the outside, I have 3x. Next, we're going to do these two boxes, negative x and negative 4. Remember, if your variable is negative, your GCF is going to be negative. So negative x and negative 4 have a greatest common factor of negative 1. 3x squared and negative x. Now this only has a GCF of our x variable. Because this is positive, our GCF is just going to be positive 1 and x. So we can just write it as just x. Next, our last two pairs, 12x and 4, have a greatest common factor of positive 4. Now, before we finalize our answer here, let's just double check we have the correct things on the outside of the box. 3x times x is 3x squared. Negative 1 times x should be negative 1x. 3x times 4 should be 12x, and negative 1 times 4 should be negative 4. Okay, so because all of that works out correctly, I know I have the correct numbers on the outside. Now it's just time to write our final factored answer. So when you are doing this, this is the most important thing. Do not forget that all the way up here, we factored out a GCF of 2. So anytime you're doing this, you need to make sure, is there already a GCF on the outside here? If there is, your final answer needs to have that GCF. So 2 is on the outside. Then we write the rest of it that we've factored over here with the box. So 3x minus 1 will go in the first parentheses, and x plus 4 will go in the other parentheses. So your final factored answer should have the GCF that we did in step 1, right here. Then it has the factor binomials, which we did using the box. So you can see all of these components are here in the final answer. Alright, now it's time for you to practice doing this on your own. So I'm going to put up the practice problem. I want you to solve it and then come back and check your work. Here is the practice problem. Go ahead and pause the video and try to factor this on your own. Okay, so don't forget, step 1 is to factor out the GCF. So, looking at these three numbers right here, you could either list all the numbers out and figure out what common factors they have, or you could do it in your head. For this, I'll just list it out so that it's clear what we did to factor. So here are my factors. So all of these, I can see there's only one greatest common factor, and that is 5. Okay, there's a couple other common factors, but this is the greatest one. So 5 is our GCF. So that means that I need to factor out a 5. Remember, you can do this by taking the original problem, divide it by the GCF, and then simplify. 10 divided by 5 is 2x squared. Negative 35 divided by 5 is negative 7x. 30 divided by 5 is positive 6. Now we want to factor this. So we're going to factor this 2x squared minus 7x plus 6. So I'm going to follow all the same steps to factor with the box method. So first thing I'm going to do is list out my a, b, and c value. A is positive 2, b is negative 7, and c is positive 6. Next, multiply a times c, so 2 times 6 and we have 12. We list out all of our factors for 12. So starting with 1, we could do 1 times 12, 2 times 6, and 3 times 4. Now remember, our b value was a negative number. So usually if your b value is negative and you're listing out only positive factors, you need to also go back and list your negative factors as well. Otherwise, there's no way these numbers will add up to 7, or to add up to negative 7. So I'm going to go back, list out all the negative factors as well. So in addition to this, I could have negative 1 times negative 12, negative 2 times negative 6, and negative 3 times negative 4. Now I'm going to do the sum of my factors. So adding all of these numbers together, 1 plus 12, 2 plus 6, 3 plus 4, negative 1 plus negative 12, negative 2 plus negative 6, and negative 3 plus negative 4. Now I want to find one that matches my b value. B was negative 7, remember from up here. And this is my factor pair that matches, negative 3 and negative 4. So now setting up my box one more time. I'm going to plug in the first term. So 2x squared will go in the first box. My two factor pairs are going to go in the other boxes, negative 3x, negative 4x. And my last number, last term, is 6, so that's going to go in the last box. Now we just write the GCFs on the outside. The GCFs that you should have came up with are 2x, negative 3, x, and negative 2. Remember, a good trick is if this factor is negative, your factor is going to be negative. Same thing here. Because this was a negative number, the factor that I write on the outside should be negative. So keep that in mind when you are writing your GCF on the outside. Double check that all of these multiply and match what is inside the boxes and that you didn't make a mistake. So far, this looks good to me. All of these multiply and equal what's in the boxes. So now I'm just going to write out my final answer. Remember, when you're writing out your final answer, don't forget to include your GCF. So we're going to write a 5 on the outside. We're going to write our factor binomials, so 2x minus 3 and x minus 2. In parentheses, this would be our entire answer, and this is fully factored. This is the most factored that we could possibly make this equation. And that is going to be the answer to our problem. Here is the very last problem that we're going to be working on. This is example 2. I want you to try and factor this on your own. I'll give you a hint. If you cannot factor out a GCF to begin with, if there is no greatest common factor, then just use the box method to factor. So list out your a, b, and c value, multiply a times c, etc. Try to pause the video and factor this on your own before watching the explanation. Okay, so let's take a look at this. So I actually gave it away earlier that there is no greatest common factor. 3, 11, and negative 20 do not have a GCF. So when that happens, you don't need to do that step, and you can just move straight into factoring with the box method. So that means we list out our a value, b value, and c value, 3, negative 11, and negative 20. Multiply a times c, so 3 times negative 20. And now we need to list all of our factors. Now be careful here, because 60 actually has a lot of factors. And anytime you have this number in a problem that you're doing, make sure that you don't miss any of the factors. So starting with number 1. 1 times negative 60. 2 times negative 30. 3 times negative 20. 4 times negative 15. 5 times negative 12. And 6 times negative 10. Now, we're actually not done yet, because there's actually another variation that we could do, which is making it negative 1 times positive 60, negative 2 times positive 30, and so on. I'm actually not going to list all of them out here, because I actually know that one of these pairs is correct and will give us the b value. However, if you add them together, it doesn't then list out the other possible factors. So let's just take the sum here of all the factors. Adding these together, 1 plus 60, negative 59. 2 plus negative 30, negative 28. 3 plus negative 20, negative 17. 4 plus negative 15, negative 11. 5 plus negative 12 is negative 7. And 6 plus negative 10 is negative 4. So looking at this list right here, I know that my b value is 11. And I need to look for which one matches my b value, which is right here, 4 and negative 15. Perfect. I didn't actually have to list out all the other factors. So now I'm just going to put these in my box over here. So we're going to draw our box. Fill our box with the first term, 3x squared, 4x, and negative 15x, and our last term, negative 20. Now for the GCF, 3 and negative 15 have a common factor of 3 and a variable x. 4 and negative 20 have a greatest common factor of 4. 3x squared and 4x have a common factor of just x. And negative 5x and negative 20 have a greatest common factor of negative 5. Now we just write our final answer. So our factored form is going to be 3x plus 4 and x minus 5. This will be our solution to the problem above. I would recommend that you rewatch the video if there's anything that you want further clarification on. Otherwise, you are ready to begin practicing.